Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Maize and Blue Reviews Michigan Football Postgame Live, along with former Wolverine Jim Scarcelli. I'm Dennis Fithian. We're ready to talk about the Fiesta Bowl. It is over now out in Arizona. And Scar, there's a lot to talk about with this game. It ends up 54-45. In the end, nobody was picking a score like that, but that's why they play the games. Let's talk about it here. Let's get into it. What's going to jump out to you first and foremost as you dig into this one?
Denny, I just had such great thoughts going in. You know, the Big Ten was undefeated. Iowa won today. Wisconsin won. Maryland won. Minnesota won. I just said, we're just going to make it 5-0. And I just had such a good thought that we were going to really move the ball against that defense. And they took away our best stuff. I mean, we obviously scored a lot of points, but it was not the way we wanted to do it. Running the football and controlling, all of our scoring was quick. It wasn't controlling the clock. And they were probably the toughest schematically, the toughest well-coached offense that we faced. They just do a great job. They spread the field. They got a quarterback that can run and pass, and they do a good job picking their moments to run him. And it created a lot of confusion for us. We tried to do some things to stop their offense, and we were probably more confused defensively today in any game than I've seen us all year. We had a lot of mental mistakes. We got out-coached on defense. We got outplayed on defense. It was just not a good defensive performance.
Yeah, you got to give us a credit over there to TCU to making the plays like they did. I'd go right back to the very beginning of this game. I mean, Michigan, they get a great run by Donovan Edwards, and you're thinking, oh, man, this thing might be easy. But it was really a bizarre game by Michigan from that point on. They get down to the goal line, and they pick a Philly special. There are a lot of people that didn't like that. To me, I think because they got down there to the 2-yard line and they had so much time off in bowl preparation, that they work on 2-point plays, whether they get to overtime or short yardage situations. And obviously they had that one and they called that one. Now, Scar, let's just start right there. I didn't, I don't like bizarre trick plays that a lot of things can go wrong, like jump passes and thing. This one, TCU's defense stayed home and they stayed right on their keys, and they played it as well as you could possibly play it. You'd probably want Loveland to throw that ball away, so you're pinning them at least down to the 2. You didn't do that. It went really badly for them. But if you are, let me just ask you, right off.
Benny,
go ahead. Well, I was saying, if you're going for a 2-point, if you're going for 2 yards right there, trick plays. Aren't you looking for, some in the middle of the game or as the game goes on where they think you're doing something, where you go right to the bag of tricks right off the bat? So what did you think of that right off the bat?
Danny, that play, the Philly special, is impossible really to cover in man coverage, okay? Because you don't have someone on the quarterback. The problem is they were in zone coverage. Now, I don't have a problem with plays like that if our coaching staff knows what the coverage is, if we know what they're going to do by formation, down and distance, whatever, they had a guy sitting right there. He's not covering anybody. JJ goes out. He runs right into that guy who's playing that zone, playing that flat. So I put that on. It isn't so much the play call. It's, normally if you make a call like that, like I said, you got to know what their coverage is. If they're in man coverage, there's nobody on the quarterback, it's a good call. If they're in zone and, so that was one check TCU. We got out coached. We were in the wrong play against that defense. And normally you know ahead of time.
Or can't you tell when you're down there at the goal line if you put somebody in motion?
That's just it. Normally you do, or you have methods to find that out, or you get out of that play.
Right.
But we didn't do it. So you have to put that on coaches because it's a play that is good against man. Okay. So that was one check, TCU out coached.
Yeah, I didn't like that, and so that started the bizarre game there. Michigan doesn't turn the ball over very much. McCarthy throws a pick 6. Michigan gets down. There was a lot of people that were complaining about the refs all game long. And, you probably have 10 or 15 plays that you could look at and say, oh, yeah, there was a late hit that was not a late hit. Michigan benefited on that. Late Kojo, had one. I know the Frogs didn't like that one. But the one that Michigan fans didn't like the most was Roman Wilson catching that touchdown. He didn't have possession. And then when he did, he was in the end zone. But then it was called a touchdown, but they reviewed it. And then they marked it at the 1. And then Khalil Mulling fumbled at the 1 yard line. The way I look at that is like, look, you're going to, sure, it was a bad call. I've watched enough football where you're going to get a few calls go against you. You can't be, if you're going to sit around that early in the game and start saying, throw your hands up, the refs have cost you, or you're going to start talking and blaming the zebras there. You can't fumble then at the 1 yard line. That's a big part of it. So, to me, that's not you can say it, but you have to accept. I mean, what's going on in a game when it comes down to the officials. So to me, it's worth mentioning, but that's not the reason that Michigan lost this game.
Oh, no, not at all. You know what? And listen, I understand where we are with our backfield. Okay. Corum is out. Donovan, they don't believe he has the physicalness, or they don't want to give him the ball in short yardage. They just don't think he's going to get us anything down there. I understand it. Okay. Mullings. So you're going to give the ball to Mullings. I get it. He probably gets a lot of reps in practice because he's been predominantly now at a running back position. Later in the game, we gave it to him, no problem. We scored. We caved their whole defensive line in. But this play, JJ was rushing it. They had Mullings offset to the left. It just didn't look like we felt comfortable. It didn't look like we had run that play enough in practice. It just didn't look synced up, timed up. So we end up fumbling the football. But I understand giving the ball to Mullings. I think we're beyond that. The kid's played running back in high school. He was he's been recruited as a running back. He's gone back. So I don't have a problem giving the ball to Mullings. I'd like to see it from a different – it just didn't look right because he was offset. We end up fumbling the ball. But, a lot of people are going to say, oh, you're giving the ball to a running back. I don't see it like that because I see the options we have. They don't think Donovan has the size, and the other guy's hurt. So that's the best thing we got. And it just it wasn't repped enough. That it didn't look like it was repped enough, having that back offset so far to the left like he was, and then we end up fumbling the ball.
Well, people complain about that, the linebacker that was switched late in the season. But if you're going to say that you like the jump pass, from the 30 against Ohio State in that situation where a linebacker was put in that situation, you can't really complain about him just, trying to get in from the 1 yard line. Although you're right, it didn't look like it was seamless. I'd say like on that Philly special, you remember the play before that, they got whistled for, not being set, the wide receivers. And I think on that Philly special, they looked a little confused there. I didn't feel confident in what they were doing. And really through the game, I mean, they're checking with the linesmen and everything, but there just seemed to be a little bit like they were off a beat, whatever, with the receivers and the offensive line. I was surprised at the offensive line. I thought that was going to be, Michigan's calling card. It has been all year long. I thought they were going to be able to dominate this game, and they were not able to. TCU, hard-hitting, good tackling, and, they won the battle of the trenches. That was a surprise. I mean, it's 21-6 at the half, a little bit of a shocking score, but then you have one of the most wild third quarters that you're ever going to see. Somehow, Michigan is able to get back in it, but they get back in it, and you could feel it. They even said it on the broadcast, Scar. The momentum has changed. And, you're looking at the Michigan fans. You feel it. You're like, wow, Michigan has changed this. They have it. But then here comes TCU. They come right back, and they just snatch that momentum. They drive the field. And, then they get a pick six, and it looked like the game was over again. But then Michigan somehow, I keep saying somehow, they just kept making plays. Their offense kept making plays there, and they get back within 3 points. And I thought if there's one critical play, there were probably a lot you could point to, but Michigan gets within 3. They're going to get TCU off the field. It's a 3rd and 7. And, they bring a blitz. Duggan is waiting for Quentin Johnson. He throws a shallow pass to him on a crosser. DJ Turner had a chance to get him down before the first down. And not only does he end up getting the first down, but he goes 76 yards for a touchdown. To me, that made it a 10-point game, ended up being a 13-point game after that. I know Michigan had a chance late, but I would point to that to be the biggest play of the game.
Yeah, there were so many huge plays in this game. So, with all the points that were scored. But yeah, Denny, I going in, I thought our offense would move the ball against that defense, and we had trouble blocking those linebackers. You got really this game came down, it's like, okay, TCU, what they do on defense, they don't see our offense a lot. They got a month to prepare. Who's going to do a better job preparing their defense for our offense or our offense for their defense? And they did a real good job preparing for that. I mean, I was confident the first play of the game, that's the best run we had by far, was the first play of the game. We had some good things going with two tight ends in the game. And I kind of thought we should have thrown some shorter passes out of these running formations because they were really loading up to stop our run game. And they had good success with it. But Danny, we had trouble stopping the quarterback run. I would say this, Danny. We played 14 games. I would say that schematically, the TCU offense was the toughest offense for us. I think other people in the Big Ten are going to look at this game, and they're going to try to see some of the things TCU did to us, because this scheme gave us a lot of problems. Sonny does a great job. He spreads the field. He has a run game, and they had a good physical inside run game with their running back. It was good. We had, and they ran the ball in there, and they were ripping us for 5, 8, 9 yards on inside run with the running back. And then, of course, they always have the quarterback keep off of all that. So I'm just glad the guy isn't in Columbus, okay? Because they don't have the best players. They got good players, but their offensive scheme is really, really good, with the quarterback that can run, backs that can run, receivers that can run, and then the great job they do spreading the field.
Yeah, well, what about when it came down to the situation where it looked like, when Michigan had to start gambling a little bit, that's when it looked like TCU was able to take advantage in some of their big plays, and then Michigan would get back into it, and they'd play, whether you want to say more of a base defense or less attacking defense, and they're able to get back into it. But then Michigan would go to the more of an attacking defense there, and then TCU was able to take advantage of it again. It seemed like not that they had Michigan on the string, but man, they were able to make those plays, and that's where you give it to that quarterback in Duggan. He was able to back out there. He was able to buy himself some time. He hangs in there, and he'll give himself an extra beat, sometimes an extra second, for some of those plays to develop, because he'll take a big time shot. Michigan just couldn't get home enough, couldn't pressure enough on
Danny, the one big play where he ran around and Blackledge was saying how great a job he did, but I'm looking at it from a defensive standpoint. We brought 6 guys and we got 2 guys rushing outside the tackle. One of them is supposed to go inside the tackle, so one guy blocked 2. We were not sound. It was our worst game schematically on defense in terms of being gap sound. We ran different blitzes, and I don't know how many times we had 2 guys in the same gaps. I don't know how many times they ran the simple quarterback read where we had 2 guys on the running back, no one on the quarterback, or 2 guys on the quarterback and no one on the running back. It was just what we've been able to do all year is run a lot of stuff on defense and have minimal mental mistakes. This game, we ran a lot of stuff, but we were not gap sound. We had a lot of mental mistakes. We had blown coverages. They threw a ball to number 1. Blown coverage. I don't know how many times we lost contain. We had guys that they hadn't done that all year. We had defensive backs lose contain. We had edge guys lose contain. And it was just frustrating, man. We got guys got pushed off the ball. But
well, let me ask you a question about that, Scar. They hadn't done this all year. They hadn't done that all year. They couldn't tackle. They got pushed around. They had blown coverages. Michigan had a long time since their game against Ohio State and then against Purdue. But TCU also played in the Big 12 championship game, so those things were equal with the time off. I think it's fair. I don't know if there's something there or not, but I'm going to ask the question to you, because here's Travis saying that Michigan always has the worst bowl prep. I think it's fair to ask the question because of Harbaugh's bowl record. He only won his first one against Florida that first year. Other than that, Michigan has lost all of their bowl games under Jim Harbaugh. Do you think that there's something that you could look at in preparation? Do you think that's fair? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a fine line in terms of how physical are you supposed. Did we look soft? Was our tackling bad because we didn't scrimmage enough? There was some tackling, that was questionable at times. But yeah, that's something that I'm not at practice. I know what it was for me as a player. We got the indoor building. We've got the ability to have good practices in Ann Arbor. I don't know. I think a lot of it was schematic though. They found it. It's like when they're on offense, they found ways to look at our defense and find the weaknesses. And then when our coaches did have a good scheme called, we had players that made mistakes. Denny, let me say this to you as a guy who played and coached. Mm-hmm. You're going to have games as a coach where you're going to save your players with great scheme. You put together a great game plan. Sometimes you're going to save your players as a coach. And there's other times you're going to have poor scheme, poor preparation, where your scheme isn't good and your players save you. And many times this year, like I think Penn State was a game our coaches had great scheme both sides of the ball. Ohio State, our players were outstanding. CJ making guys miss, JJ making guys, we've had games where one side or the other saved the team. This game, our coaches were below average and our players were below average, in my opinion. So neither side was able to save each other from, a below average performance. That's kind of how I see it.
I'll answer that question myself. I think you go through year by year and you look at the games. The bowl record speaks for itself. I will look at what the coaches said and how the players acted and what they were saying about their preparation. And I really I thought they had a very good vibe. I thought that it was what they were saying. Like they weren't out there, going to steakhouses or, out on the beach and playing around like in some of the other, having fun, as college students. It's a bowl trip, but you go out there and have some fun too. This was a business trip. And all year long, this team had talked about, even before, they weren't even in a 24-hour rule. You had Blake Corum after the Michigan State game saying, before they even hit the tunnel, hey, we're on to the next game. We're on to Rutgers. We're not sitting around, enjoying this one. So I thought they had the leadership. I thought that they were saying the right things. And even when they get out there was the one remark because they had to on Thursday meet the media. Everybody's required to do that. And the players were saying, hey, coach, we want to watch some film or we want to prepare a little bit more or something. And Harbaugh's like, look, we can't get out of it. We have to go there. So, I like all of that. I go through it. Michigan was great in their first bowl game, but they lost to, Delvin Cook had a huge run against them back in 2016. South Carolina, it was a complete meltdown. I'll blame Don Brown and his defense that year and in 2018 against Florida. In 2019, they played Alabama, and Alabama, they had, Mac Jones and throwing to 3 or 4 NFL wide receivers out there. Alabama was the better team. So you get to the pandemic, and then you get to last year in Georgia. Georgia was the better team. And I'm going to say this year that TCU was the better team. TCU was able to, and you can say some of these wounds were self-inflicted, but TCU's defense looked faster. They were able to tackle. They were able to, dominate a Michigan offensive line that was supposed to be the best offensive line in the country. They were up to the task. They were tougher. And their offensive line, they were able to, and their wide receivers as advertised. Quentin Johnson, he is a first-round pick. He made big play after big play. And he made the biggest play on a 3rd and 7. They threw the ball to him 1 or 2 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. He broke a tackle from DJ Turner, and he took it 76 yards. That's what you do when you have a great player and a difference maker, and he did it. He made the biggest play of the game. So a lot of credit has to go to TCU there for what they were able to do in all 3 phases of the game because they got a big punt return that was huge in the game too. I know they missed an extra point, but TCU, I look at it like this for Michigan fans. Like, if Michigan would have won this game, we'd be talking about Georgia. And I would say, if Michigan played Georgia 10 times, I think they would probably lose 6 or 7 times. I think if Michigan played TCU, they'd probably beat them 6 or 7 times. But TCU had the right plays. They coached the right game, and their players, played their asses off, and they deserve this one. And, if I'm going to praise Michigan's defensive adjustments and everything that they did all year long, to me, I think there's fair criticism. When you lose a ball game like this, you can go back. But man, I look at TCU, just playing a fantastic game, and more credit needs to go to them than just saying, Michigan, or some kind of chumps or something, for losing this ball game. I don't know if they need to go back to the drawing board. It's a fair question to ask about bowl preparation, but from what I saw, that they looked like they were doing all the right things going into this one.
Yeah, the bowl prep. I don't know if like I said, I've been part of 5 different ones, and we always scrimmaged pretty darn hard. And if there was any problem with my era, was maybe we went a little hard. I don't know how hard Jim's going, but then Danny, talking about the offensive line and the the Joe Moore Award. I'm just going to keep it real with you. I'm going to give my honest thoughts. An offensive line, you're only as good as your quarterback, your receivers, your tight ends, your running backs, but more importantly than any of that, okay, all those different groups, tight ends, offensive line, receiver, the bottom line is you better have some people scheming up some stuff. You better have a great practice plan for how you're going to attack a certain defense. You better have an idea what the opponent's doing with his scheme, down and distance, what personnel he has in the game. How can you fool the enemy, period, all the time? You better have that. Okay, and we've been doing that all year. We've been getting the upper hand on people schematically, fooling people, and then getting a good dosage of players out playing people. But you still got to have that, and we really didn't have that so much. We didn't have that today, to help our offensive line. If you are the Joe Moore Award offensive line, again, you get a lot of help from a lot of people. But like I say, Danny, I think people in the Big Ten are going to look at this. You're going to beat Michigan. I think this is a terrible matchup for our defense. This type of offense is a terrible matchup. Like if we defend Ohio State in the 22 formation, 2 receivers here, 2 receivers there, they're a hell of a lot easier to defend than this team because they don't run the quarterback. Even though they might not have as the great skill players like Ohio State. But if I'm defending TCU's offense or Ohio State's offense, there's a big part of me would rather defend Ohio State because I don't have the quarterback run threat on every single down that I always got to worry about defending TCU. And that's why they hung 50 on us.
Yeah, well, the defense doesn't get a passing grade for sure in this one, and they're a big-time culprit. But you know what? The offense is just as culpable. The defense didn't throw 2 picks. They also didn't fumble down there at the 1. They also didn't give up a punt return. They got them, into the red zone. They also, when they were down there at a 2, didn't come down away on downs because they threw a Philly special that blew up in their face. And when, the offense was able to, get back in the game, that defense really needed to, when that momentum swung, not being able to, and they did it a couple times. I mean, let's be honest, they did it a couple times. They were going to find a way somehow to dig down and get into this game. But man, the huge momentum swings. But you've got to be able to, like, when you're starting to talk about, giving up big plays, you just can't give them up to the tune that they were giving them up. And the 76-yarder in a game that was defined by a bunch of points and a bunch of plays and a bunch of big plays. There was no bigger play. And even when you get those pick sixes and everything else, you got Quentin Johnson going 76 yards for a touchdown. When the Michigan polls within 3, even though they had chances, they probably had another 3-4 chances to come back and be in this game and win this game. That was the one that
that was an all-out. They brought a lot of pressure there, and they could have called offensive interference because his guy Johnson was picked on that play.
Yeah.
But, Danny, we got to give our coaches – and the plays like the flea flicker, those are the plays I think early on when we ran that flea flicker for a touchdown, where a running back threw it back. Those are the plays I think early on, if we ran those, would have softened up their defense because they were so geared up to stop our inside run game. So let's give our coaches credit for that. But in general, Danny, from the offensive line, the one thing I was really concerned about was our offensive line ability. I just talked to a guy I played with who played guard, and we just didn't get to the second level. We didn't block those linebackers good enough. If they only got 3 defensive linemen, that means some of your guards pulling and your tackles. That means they got to block linebackers. And I thought as long as we get those guys blocked, we should have an advantage there. But there's many times that did not happen. So I think our running back play, Denny, I don't think our running back play was great. We had the big run early in the game. Other than that, it was very, very average. We fumble on the goal line. Our receivers.
I would agree with you on that, Scar. I thought going into this one, taking a look at it, that Michigan was going to have a huge advantage with Donovan Edwards and Michigan's offensive line. He did have that 46-yard run, and he ended up having over 100 yards in the game, but it never looked like that, Michigan was going to be deadly. Now they had to play catch up a lot too, but and I know he couldn't go out and get in the pass receiving game because of his hand, even though he said he was good to go. And you look at his numbers in 119 yards, and I think, you play this game, and a lot of times you don't want to. You say, well, you can't take the 46 yards out of there. But, that was the first play of the game. And then after that, they just didn't have that to lean on. And, that's their bread and butter. And, how many times this year when you were talking about the games, you're talking about secure the football and all that. And,
it's always number one.
Oh, they weren't.
Danny,
they came up empty at number one, and then throwing the ball to the other team for 2 pick sixes. You start talking about, a fumble of the ball on the one and throwing 2 pick sixes. It's like, it's just a shock. I can't, I thought they were buried in the first half, and I didn't think really that they were going to come back in the second half. And then I thought they were, and then I didn't think they were 3 or 4 times. It makes for a very exciting game when it's going like that, when you think it's over and then they're able to come back. But, you can only do so much of that. And,
Denny, let me quickly go over a couple of position groups. I thought losing Schoonmaker, that's huge. I've said it all year. I think our most important player is our quarterback. The second most important player is Corum, and he's out. And I thought the third most important player on our football team is Schoonmaker, and he's out. So our two and third best players were important players to our offense. Schooney gives us blocking at the point of attack. He's a threat as a receiver. He caught the one ball. I think he's got a shoulder or something. He re-hurt his shoulder. He was done. And that was huge. And now you got guys in there playing Bredesen played a lot, but he doesn't give you the threat. And the true freshman is, he's just not Loveland is not the blocker yet. But our receivers, we made some mistakes on blocking. We run the bubble screen. I knew the first 2-point conversion, or our first time on the goal line on 4th down. As soon as we came out in that formation with 3 receivers, I said they're going to throw the bubble out there. But so did TCU, and they hit him right in the face. You remember that first touchdown, 4th and goal down there? I said I know what we're running, and sure as hell TCU knew exactly what we were running too. So, Ronnie Bell made a nice catch, and but our receivers were kind of we made some mistakes blocking, and I don't know, Denny. I thought JJ with the 2 picks, but I don't know how that defensive back Todd Blackledge says he was in man coverage is jumping on that outcut so fast in man coverage. If that's the case, they don't respect Ronnie Bell's ability to go deep. For a guy to jump on an outcut and pick it off and go for pick 6, that means they really don't respect your ability to go deep.
Well, on both of those, one, he had to throw it an awful long way, and you can get a little bit. I mean, you think that you've got, and JJ, I know he loves his arm, but that's he was for the opposite hash and he's throwing it across there. That's a tough throw to make. And the other one, I think he was telegraphing it a little bit. He was sitting on him and he was reading it. And look, JJ ended up, with 343 yards. The 2 picks weren't any good. I think Matt's making a good point that he was all right, pretty good today. He said it was too bad he didn't run earlier. And it was like when the game, it was kind of in panic mode and they needed really to do something. He started running, man. He started getting huge chunk plays. I mean, gigantic plays with his legs. He ended up with 52 yards. He had that 139-yarder. I'm surprised that there weren't more plays called for JJ.
Denny, I was watching, but you have to look at what they were doing defensively. They were honoring him on all of our, whenever he's got that option to pull it out, but they were honoring it. We'll look at the film and go over it Monday, but I was hoping for that too, but TCU was honoring for the most part any opportunity, JJ would have had to pull that ball out because obviously they've seen the film. And yeah, JJ did some things, scrambling around, keeping the play alive with his legs. But in general, no one was good enough. No Michigan player, no Michigan coach was good enough today.
Yeah,
there's a good point there, Denny. Our offense pocket collapsed way too many times. And it's a great point, Matt. Because I thought we'd really protect well, but some of the things they were doing, bringing linebackers late, and it's like we didn't prepare for some of the stuff they were, some of the types of blitzes we might see from them. So our offensive pass protection, I thought we were going to be rock solid defending all their stuff, and it just wasn't, and it just wasn't good enough.
No, it wasn't. I mean, like, you go through a position group almost for player, and yeah, you can point out, well, he made some plays here. This guy made some good plays. But then overall, like, the offensive line, pass pro, run blocking. I mean, they didn't get the job done. JJ, did some nice things, but also threw 2 picks, fumbling the ball down at the 1. Way too many mistakes. I mean, that's not, they didn't they didn't have a championship type game plan. They didn't have a championship type mentality. It blew up on them from the start, and they never were able to, even though they did come back and give themselves a chance. You could trace this one back from the very, first possession of the game, and, it was going to be bizarre land, and you got to be able to, when you get down there, sometimes you're going to have a game like that, and it was a wild one, and they couldn't find a way to make enough plays to win this one, but they can all take a look at themselves here because they had, a bunch of different opportunities, even after saying all of that, to be in this game and have a chance to win.
Yeah, Denny, like early in the game, I don't know if you remember, we ran a jet sweep to Henning, number 3, and linebacker fires in there, and it just takes him out for like a 6-yard gain and 6-yard loss. And, a lot that goes on. That's on the quarterback. That's on the, it has to be timed up better. It was snapped way too early. That play has to be snapped right when he's over the center. So that linebacker has to, it makes it a lot tougher on that, or you better seal that gap with your linebacker. What was that question, Denny? Someone had a question for Scar about blitzing. Why were we blitzing so much? Or I forget. It was just a second ago. Why we were blitzing more? I think because we just figured out. I think our defensive coaches realized we could not sit there and stop them playing really just sound fundamental defense. They had our defense in conflict where we were guessing, and we were guessing wrong most of the time. And our coaches found themselves, I think, and I've been in there as a coach where you can't stop them with your basic stuff. That I think our coaches felt they had to just do a lot more blitzing, and then it got us in trouble for big plays.
Yeah, well, the part where they had Roman Wilson, I think he ended up getting hurt, and that's where they came back, and that's when they went to A.J. Henning. I don't think they had A.J. Henning out on the field 5 times this year for plays, not in the, after the non-conference. So, breaking them out in the Fiesta Bowl, I think everybody was like, hey, here comes the end around, to 3. But
you're absolutely right, Denny. When you do bring guys in the game like that, they got a scouting report. They see 3s in the game. They know what he can do. And, they looked at a hell of a lot more film real thoroughly. But what else do I have here? I thought we should have thrown the ball early, short passing to soften up because they were really gearing up, bringing pressure to stop our run game. Great offensive line. Again, I covered that. Only as good as scheme. I thought that the preparation, I covered that. I thought that they did a better job preparing our offense for their 3-3-5 than we did attacking the 3-3-5 in that month off. So, what else do I have? Denny, just really defensively, we were just not coordinated. I got it down on my notes here again. So many times that's why the guys call the defensive coordinator. I've been a defensive you got to coordinate everything. You got to make sure everything is sound. Your adjustments are coordinated. Your stunts, your blitzes are coordinated. You don't have 2 guys coming off the edge so a tackle can block both of you. And that happened a couple times today. That big pass that he had where he ran around and stepped up in the pocket. we were not coordinated. And Minter, we've been stroking him all year. Well, he was very average at best today.
Well, they probably had about 10 plays, and I've already mentioned this one twice, and I can understand if you want to look away and not watch this one. But here to me was the backbreaker. The momentum is all Michigan's in this game. They get a stop here. I'm telling you that we're going to win the ball game. I'm going to go ahead and cue it up. This is a Michigan just gets a stop. It is a 3rd and 7, and TCU. Well, let's see. I have to push the play on it if I can do it. Let's see.
Maybe this is the 76-yard run.
Yeah, this is it. So we'll take a look at it. This is it. Michigan with a chance to.
Yeah, see, this ball was thrown on our side of the line of scrimmage, and way down the field, you could see that there's, again, they run right into Johnson down there on this crossing route. Oh, no, it's thrown on their side of the line of scrimmage.
Got to get him down right there.
Yeah, it's that's why people play in space, Denny. Speed and space. Because these coaches have figured out one of the toughest things to do in football is tackle in the open field. That's why everybody recruits fast guys at receiver, because they know how hard it is to tackle in space.
Well, it's just the one where, so this is a zero coverage. You don't have any safety help back there, right? So,
well, let's see. They're we bring in edge pressure. We get nothing. Yeah, he just got him. He should be upfield with his right shoulder there and try to miss it back inside and make, it's just a bad angle he took.
How about putting Will Johnson over there on Johnston? More of a one battle. How come they didn't do that?
Well, they had him. I think that was the play he got picked. It's interesting listening to Todd Blackledge talk about how that long pass, how the quarterback stepped up the pocket. I look at from a defense. I'm a former defensive player. I look at it that the defense screwed up. The defense wasn't good in their pass rush. They weren't sound in their pass rush. They weren't gap sound in their pass rush. And they had two guys out, not sound. So I looked at it more that a defense screwed up than the quarterback was outstanding. But again, we play different positions. Michigan got out coached. You can't give up 50. Absolutely right. I'm a U of M fan. Can't give up 51.
What the quarterback needs to do is sometimes look at what's going on in the defense. And you as a defensive guy, you got to have to consider both sides of the ball. A lot of times you players will dig in on one side of the ball or your own position. And that's kind of your vantage point. We understand that. It's the ability to be able to, to look at everything. And, I get Blackledge.
No, trust me, I get it. No, Danny, I understand. The quarterback made a good play. The defense just did not make it difficult for him. We had our coach. That was one of the times our coach called a good scheme. He called a good defense, but the players have to execute it. And it was one of those times we were not coordinated. So that's the coach has to call the right defense at the right time. And then he has to rep it in practice to make sure the guys know where the hell they're supposed to be and make sure it's coordinated. And it wasn't. And we'll look at that stuff on film.
Well, I'll take a look at it like this. Michigan had number 5. However you want to look at it, it wasn't like he was, reaching for air on anything. He had an opportunity to go there and tackle Quentin Johnston. Now, hey, this guy's going to be in the pros, and it's a game of blocking and tackling, Scar. When you really boil it down, football, we don't have to get too fancy. And you can talk about all the chess pieces moving around and pick plays and everything else. Duggan threw the ball to Johnson, and number 5 had him in his sights, had the ability to come up. You got to wrap up, and if you make the play there, Michigan's going to win the game. They did not, and he went for 76 yards. It was a backbreaker, even though Michigan had 3 or 4 more chances, where you could say that they had an opportunity to win the game. That's the one. So you guys can sit around talking about schemes and the coaches and everything else, and the player had him in his sights. And it's a game of being able to get him on the ground, and he wasn't able to do it. And that's how I'm looking at it right there. Opportunity.
No, I get it. Denny, it's a tough thing to do, to tackle in space, and he didn't get it done. And the great teams find a way to do it. And you bring pressure like that. The coach knows he's putting his defensive secondary in a bind by doing that. But what were some good things? I mean, how about special teams? Let's take a quick look. Our kicker. How about our kicker? 59-yard field goal. So old Jake, he goes out he was strong. We kicked the ball off at the end. That was kind of nice to see that. We pump faked them with the onside, thought we were going to onside. We get the great field position, got him on the 10-yard line, and then one of the worst plays of the game. Okay, first down, we get him stopped, 2nd and 8, and now we let him run like 6 yards.
That was big.
That was terrible. I mean, come on, we got him in poor field position, and we're playing pass. If they're going to keep running the ball down here, it's poor field position.
What about the clock management at the end? There were some people, I thought, look, Blackledge wanted, and McDonough was over there too. They were like, Michigan needs to really get in the tempo here. Look, could they have saved an extra 10 seconds? Could that have been a difference when they got the ball back with 52 seconds and 75 yards to go? Possibly. I think there was a little bit, but let's not make it sound like they blew a minute there. And he did. I mean, the timeout calls, he's got 3 of them. He could have taken it on first down, and then on the third down, they would have bled it out a little bit there. But they could have had a little bit more urgency when they actually did go in there to score. I think there's a point to that. I don't want to make it sound like, they executed all that perfectly. But the name of the game there is making sure you get the touchdown, and they were able to get the ball back. But you're right. That was a real bet.
That was a little
way that they go, Scar. That play that you're talking about, that run that got them within a yard, and they were able to pick up the first down. That's big in the large.
Yeah, I just didn't understand what we were doing. I get it. I get it. They've done a lot of things. The guy, Sonny's tough. He'll throw the ball. He's a courageous guy. But I just thought with that field position, that time in the game, he was going to run the football. And he did. He ran it. We let him do it. I just want to say this so people understand some things. There's a guy named Lincoln Riley, who was a real good coach at Oklahoma because he was a creative offensive whiz. He's out at USC now doing the same things. He had one player. He had a great season. He had a quarterback. The guy's tough. He's tough to defend. You watch USC, he's tough to defend. And guess what? His brother was coaching that TCU offense, okay? And his brother is a smart guy too, along with Sonny. And those, I got to point it out. They're smart. They make everything tough for you. I give the guy credit because I've stood here and I've told you, Manny Diaz, I'll go against that guy any day of the week. I've said it. Okay. I said I'll go against Ryan Day as an offensive coach any day of the week. I've said it. But this guy here, Garrett Riley and Sonny, those guys are good offensive coaches. And I'm glad I'm glad they're not coaching in Columbus. But Garrett Riley is a hell of an offensive coordinator. They made nothing easy for us. Just got to throw it out there because there's a name behind a lot of that play calling today.
No, I hear you. And I don't know if everybody wants to say it. Christopher is. TCU outcoached us on both sides of the ball. That's given them some credit where, credit is deserved there. And Michigan making some critical mistakes. Here's somebody tipping the cap to TCU. I think that's right. Here's AOKO. It's good to see him in here after the game. He said it was a great season. We'll be better next year. I reserve great for – it was a great regular season. Just like last year, it was a really good season. But, I mean, like the difference between this year and last year is that, it was great because Michigan was able to bust through and do some things they hadn't done for ever. They hadn't beat Ohio State and won the Big Ten for almost like 20 years. Then they were able to do it last year, and they beat Ohio State. They validated it by going to Indianapolis and beating Iowa. All of that was fantastic. So it was almost like, it was almost gravy afterwards, but it wasn't like that, going into today. So, it's just a little bit of an argument. You have a very good season, impressive season. They got a lot to build on. I don't think they're going anywhere. They've got a lot of young players, and they're going to be highly ranked next year heading into the season, and they can be right back in the same position in the Final Four. But, you have opportunities in this sport, and next year is going to be the last iteration of this where you have 4 teams, and then after that, you're going to have 12. So who knows how it's going to go. This was a great opportunity for Michigan to they were in prime position to get to the national championship game. Anytime you get to the Final Four, you're going to have to take on a tough opponent. TCU proved to be the tougher opponent today, but heading in, man, that's why I think this one hurts and stings more than last year because of the chance that Michigan had. And I'd say the same thing, of whoever wins the the game and whoever Michigan would play in the championship game, like, they had a chance, probably a better chance at beating them, whoever they would face in a future championship game. So that's why this one hurts a little bit more.
Yeah, Denny, I think it's a great season. I'll take where we are as a program. I mean, we won 13 straight football games. We lost to a real good team that has got a good quarterback, good coach, and we didn't play our best game. Didn't have our great, the best scheme. Didn't play the best. But our program, I mean, we have a solid foundation of what we're doing on offense. We know what we're doing. We're recruiting good players. We brought in great transfers that are coming in next year. We got our quarterback back. We've got Minter back. We're going to have most of those guys. I don't know if we're going to lose any of them coaches, but I think we're going to be. Our defense is sound. We know what we're doing now. Our coaches will look at what TCU do because I said I guarantee you, people in our league are going to look at that game. You want to win the Big Ten, you got to beat Michigan. So they're going to look at how TCU was able to put all these points on us. And our coaches will make some changes and figure some things out. But our program is right where we want it to be. We're recruiting good players. We've got good coaches. We got a lot of good players back. So I'm real confident and comfortable with where we are right now.
Tyler says, thanks for not mentioning the refs. We lost it. Well, we mentioned the call to Roman Wilson earlier in the game, but there was you can't. I had a friend on Twitter, and then I had him also texting me like, I don't say the. And it's like, look, I understand that Michigan fumbled the ball right after that, and they should have had a touchdown. But in the game of football, you're going to have. I would say that even if that was like the very last play of the game, and this would be a tough one to kind of consider and put in your head. Let's just say like Michigan, with 5 seconds to go, would have scored the touchdown to Roman Wilson, and then inexplicably they would have made the call just like they did in the first half, and then Michigan just had to get it in from the 1 yard line, and they fumbled. I mean, you're going to go back and make it sound like the refs, your calls are going to go against you. And I don't know. I had a friend who was at the game who was sitting about a bunch of horned frogs. He kept calling them frogs and sending me these emojis of frogs. He said they're crying about the calls every play. And I'm like, well, they got a point on this one and they got a point on that one. I mean, you sit around with a bunch of TCU fans and they thought they got hosed. And I got news for you. Any game that you watch, the bigger the game, the more that you end up thinking you get hosed by the refs. They suck. They're human. They're going to make a bunch, just like Michigan had a lot of errors in this game. Almost every game you're going to watch, and these are the best. They get graded out. I get these assignments. These guys blow the game. When you have, but always what kills you though is when you have the play-by-play man, the color analyst, they're like, oh, this is a touchdown. And then they bring the topper when they bring the rules analyst in, and he's like, oh, yeah, that's a touchdown. I mean, look at it. You guys got it right. And they come out there, and they're like, no, he's down at the 1. Everybody, it doesn't do you any good. It just makes you upset, Gar.
Yeah, Denny, it's the referees, I don't know what kind of role they played in this game, but it's disappointing. I've been there I've been on a team that lost. It kind of sucks for a lot of those seniors to go out like that, to lose your last game. I was lucky. My last game in Phoenix was a win, and I'll never forget it. How that feeling, and I kind of feel bad for those guys to be in that locker room and turning their equipment in and never going to put that helmet on again and ending it like that. So. That I understand what they're going through in that locker room now because I've seen it, I lived it, and guys like Ulu and Scooney and some of those guys that played their last game. So I feel bad for those guys.
Did they have that Fiesta Bowl trophy when you played, Scar, or is it a little bit smaller?
We had a trophy. I see it over there in the Michigan Hall of Fame over there at Schembeckler Hall. It's there. So
Fiesta. It looked like the one.
I don't know if it had all the diamonds like this one, but.
No, that one they said cost $2 million. Let me read some of the feedback. You can respond to it. This is from Christopher. He says, disappointing end to an incredible season. Gravel in their gut for next year. This one will hurt for a while. Team must marinate in it and then get back to work. Credit to TCU. Mark says, as Macbeth says, a conflict has one solution and is easy to resolve, but a dilemma has more than one solution and your enemy has to pick one.
That's a great quote. I love that quote because that's the kind of situation our defense was in today. That is a great, Mark. That's awesome, man. We had some dilemmas today that old Sonny and Riley put our defense in. And it's absolutely true. And that's what we do. That's what we were able to do as coaches. Danny, what was the thing? I'm going to get some. What was the one thing that we were able to do in every single football game except Illinois all year? We were able to make the opponent one-dimensional. Our defense was able to do that. We were able to make the opponent one-dimensional. We stuffed their run game and neutralized their run game, and then we just had to worry about their pass. And we weren't able. Who did that to us today? TCU, we had the one run, and I don't know what we had outside of that one run. You know what I mean? They were able to do that to us. They made us primarily a one-dimensional football team. And that's just what Sonny said he was going to do. If you listen to what Sonny talked about, he said, I got to make Michigan one-dimensional. We got to make JJ beat us. And that's exactly what he did, man.
Here's a Happy New Year from Sydney. So they're already ringing it in Sydney, who, they got to be a couple. They're probably already past midnight out there. I guess I don't know how many hours ahead it is, but there you go. So, Scar, we're getting down towards the end of it. We're going to keep going.
Jenny, I just want to keep saying Michigan fans should be real good about, I know people looking at the recruits, maybe, we're only like 17, 18, but, these are Michigan type of guys. I think we brought in our transfer, the guys we brought in as transfers are going to really compete. I think we're just going to reload, man. We're going to be right there again. We got our quarterback back. We got a lot of good players on defense back. And you're right, losing Corum is, like I said, we lost our second and third most valuable players on our football team, in my opinion, Corum and Scooney. So, but then again, good teams got to find a way to overcome that.
Yeah, well, they were able to overcome a lot. Losing your MVP and Corum. You forget about losing Eric All. Loveland emerged. It's
that's another good point there that somebody just made about no pass rush, and that was one of the things that it looked like TCU on film was pretty darn good pass protecting. I was hoping that wasn't true, and they were darn good pass protecting, and I think Minter got frustrated that the only way we could get any kind of pressure was bringing extra bodies. And then, of course, that puts your secondary in a real bind, one-on-one, no help type situation. So,
yeah, Corum was shown on the sideline. He had a sweet chain.
And he was there.
He was cheering on the team. Killer Panda. What does this say about the Big Ten? What does it say about the Big Ten, Scar?
Well, I mean, we're 4-1 right now. I mean, the Michigan didn't get it done today against a good football team. I think the Big Ten is holding up pretty respectfully right now. It's just our lead dog didn't get it done, but I think, hopefully the Buckeyes will get it done tonight, and and some of these other Big Ten teams will win. Well, I don't know. Again, I don't want to talk about Ohio State. I don't want to talk about that.
I don't either.
But
I don't either. Mark says he greatly undervalued the 335. I missed it. I feel like eating some humble pie with Michigan.
Mark, I'll tell you, the three, I don't care what a team runs, if the coaches you got to get your team ready for it. And I thought it was a great situation. We had a month to really prepare for what they do and how they did it. And we just didn't get it done, man. We didn't exploit the weaknesses of what they do to get our run game going. They shut our run game down, which is our bread and butter, and that's what I thought would have been the weakness of that defense. And no Angelo Anthony tonight. I don't think, did he play at all, Denny?
I didn't see him. Yeah, he was hurt, even though he didn't practice earlier in the week, but then and this is the open practice, but then on Thursday he was fully dressed and participated in just the open portion there. And then he said in the media portion where Michigan was available that he was 100%, or I'm paraphrasing. He said he was good to go, that he was going to play, but and that wasn't a factor. And I think why Michigan ended up losing the game. Michigan, this one, you go back and Michigan would have won this game. We were talking about, the greatest comeback and one of the greatest games ever, but it really was a bizarre game, a big game. I'm sure if you weren't a Michigan fan, I don't know how many we're talking to right now, a very entertaining game, to watch as a bowl game. So many fireworks and going back and forth, and it looked like Michigan was going to be able to come back, a number of times in this one and maybe pull it out. But, the Wolverines right from the start, it took on a bizarre feel with them going with the Philly special on their first drive, even after they had their big run. And then, from there, they're getting down, the 14 points, and they're kicking field goals, and then they're fumbling down at the one. And, they hung in there that way. But, you pick up the pieces a little bit, and, you go to the college football playoff 2 years in a row, and you beat Ohio State 2 years in a row, and you go to Indianapolis and you win the Big Ten 2 years in a row. Those are, a lot of fine things that you'll feel good about. But I don't know if that's doing anybody any good here tonight, heading into New Year's. I don't.
I'll tell you some good news, though, Denny.
Go ahead.
If you would have been betting and listening to Scar all year, you would have won money. Because what did I say? I said Michigan will score, because they didn't have the line earlier in the week, how many points Michigan would score. It ended up being 33. So if you listen to me on Monday, I said bet that Michigan will score over the amount that they didn't have it on Monday, but it was 33. It came out today, and obviously they went over 33. But I kind of knew remember, Danny, I always told you one of the first things I look at is the inside, is I look at our two inside guys defensively to get an idea of how the game's going to go. And I could tell early on when I saw Jenkins and Mozzie Smith in there.
Yeah.
And they were getting some movement on those our two inside guys early on in the game. And I knew then that, this, and they had a good inside run game, but when they got movement on those two players, they usually dictate to me how things are going to go defensively. And that was not an encouraging sign to see that early on.
I agree with you. Well, Scar, the one thing is we're not going anywhere. I mean, this feels like it's over because the season is over. It was a fun season. It was an exciting season. And, Michigan was able to get to New Year's Eve. I know a lot of people were, thinking about that championship game. And, it's a hard one to swallow here tonight. I'll give you that. I'll give you a chance to give the final word. So that means I have to give my final word to Michigan fans. And, Michigan fans, Jim Harbaugh lost his coordinators last year. And think about it. He went with a quarterback when he had a quarterback that won on the Big Ten last year. And Michigan had a number of injuries, and they were able to put together a perfect season, and they were able to beat Ohio State in Columbus. And so that worm has turned. So just from that, if you just take today and push it over here, don't think about it, being able to flip the Ohio State series like Michigan has here and now look like, that the better days and better years are ahead, just with that rivalry is great news for Michigan fans. And considering the team that they have coming back and the players that we already know from the recruiting class, but really the starters that look like are going to be available from the transfer portal, that talking about this team being right back there in the college football playoff isn't far-fetched. And so that's the good news. The bad news we just talked about for the last hour. Scar, I want to wish you a great rest of your 2022. It's been fun working with you. We're looking forward to 2023. And why don't you tell everybody your final thoughts on this game?
Denny, you're right on time with. I think we have the right leader. We have the right system on both sides of the ball. So if we lose coordinators, if we lose coaches, we're not missing a beat, because I think we are what we are now. We stand for something on offense. The system is what it is. I think we stand for something on defense. The system is what it is. And we're bringing in good players. Our program is sound. Our program is good as it's ever going to be. And I'm going to give you a little quote, a little Schembechler quote.
Oh,
he used to say, men, in the end, they always got to go through Michigan. It's always going to be Michigan. In the end, it's going to be Michigan. So our opponents know that Michigan is there. Our coaches are there. We got players. We got coaches. they got to go through us. You want to win a championship, you got to go through Michigan. So that's my final word. Great season, Coach Harbaugh, and all your assistants and all the players. And we will be back to defend our title next year. Happy New Year, Denny.
From Macbeth to Schembechler, from Scarcelli. Thanks for watching. It's been fun having you. I'll see you on Monday. Happy New Year, everybody. Be safe out there.